by their work itself. That the overwork of all miners must engender drunkenness is self-evident. As to their sexual relations, men, women, and children work in the mines, in many cases, wholly naked, and in most cases, nearly so, by reason of the prevailing heat, and the consequences in the dark, lonely mines may be imagined. The number of illegitimate children is here disproportionately large, and indicates what goes on among the half-savage population below ground, but proves too, that the illegitimate intercourse of the sexes has not here, as in the great cities, sunk to the level of prostitution. The labor of women entails the same consequences as in the factories, dissolves the family, and makes the mother totally incapable of household work. When the Children's Employment Commission's report was laid before Parliament, Lord Ashley hastened to bring in a bill wholly forbidding the work of women in the mines, and greatly limiting that of children. The bill was adopted, but has remained a dead letter in most districts, because no mine inspectors were appointed to watch over its being carried into effect. The evasion of the law is very easy in the country districts in which the mines are situated, and no one need be surprised that the Miners' Union laid before the Home Secretary an official notice, last year, that in the Duke of Hamilton's coal mines in Scotland, more than 60 women were at work, or that the Manchester Guardian reported that a girl perished in an explosion in a mine near Wigan, and no one troubled himself further about the fact that an infringement of the law was thus revealed. In single cases the employment of women may have been discontinued, but in general the old state of things remains as before. These are, however, not all the afflictions known to the coal miners. The bourgeoisie, not content with ruining the health of these people, keeping them in danger of sudden loss of life, robbing them of all opportunity for education, plunders them in other directions in the most shameless manner. The truck system is here the rule, not the exception, and is carried on in the most direct and undisguised manner. The cottage system, likewise, is universal, and here almost a necessity, but it is used here too, for the better plundering of the workers. To these means of oppression must be added all sorts of direct cheating. While coal is sold by weight, the worker's wages are reckoned chiefly by measure, and when his tub is not perfectly full he receives no pay whatever, while he gets not a farthing for overmeasure. If there is more than a specified quantity of dust in the tub, a matter which depends much less upon the miner than upon the nature of the seam, he not only loses his whole wage, but is fined besides. The fine system in general is so highly perfected in the coal mines, that a poor devil who has worked the whole week, and comes for his wages, sometimes learns from the overseer, who fine at discretion, and without summoning the workers, that he not only has no wages, but must pay so and so much in fines extra. The overseer has, in general, absolute power over wages. He notes the work done, and can please himself as to what he pays the worker, who is forced to take his word. In some mines, where the pay is according to weight, false decimal scales are used, whose weights are not subject to the inspection of the authorities. In one coal mine there was actually a regulation, that any workman who intended to complain of the falseness of the scales must give notice to the overseer 3 weeks in advance. In many districts, especially in the north of England, it is customary to engage the workers by the year. They pledge themselves to work for no other employer during that time, but the mine owner by no means pledges himself to give them work, so that they are often without it for months together, and if they seek elsewhere, they are sent to the treadmill for 6 weeks for breach of contract. In other contracts, work to the amount of 26 every 14 days is promised the miners, but not furnished. In others still, the employers advance the miners small sums, to be worked out afterwards, thus binding the debtors to themselves. In the north, the custom is general of keeping the payment of wages 1 week behindhand, chaining the miners in this way to their work. And to complete the slavery of these enthralled workers, nearly all the justices of the peace in the coal districts are mine owners themselves, or relatives or friends of mine owners, and possess almost unlimited power in these poor, uncivilized regions where there are few newspapers, these few in the service of the ruling class, and but little other agitation. It is almost beyond conception, how these poor coal miners have been plundered and tyrannized over by justices of the peace acting as judges in their own cause. So it went on for a long time. The workers did not know any better than that they were there for the purpose of being swindled out of their very lives. but gradually, even among them, and especially in the factory districts, where contact with the more intelligent operatives could not fail of its effect, there arose a spirit of opposition to the shameless oppression of the coal kings. The men began to form unions and strike from time to time. In civilized districts they joined the Chartists body and soul. The great coal district of the north of England, shut off from all industrial intercourse, remained backward until, after many efforts, partly of the Chartists, and partly of the more intelligent miners themselves, a general spirit of opposition arose in 1843. Such a movement seized the workers of Northumberland and Durham, that they placed themselves at the forefront of a general union of coal miners throughout the kingdom, and appointed W. P. Roberts, a Chartist solicitor, of Bristol, their Attorney General, he having distinguished himself in earlier Chartist trials. The union soon spread over a great majority of the districts. Agents were appointed in all directions, who held meetings everywhere, and secured new members. At the first conference of delegates, in Manchester, in 1844, there were 60,000 members represented, and at Glasgow, 6 months later, at the second conference, 100,000. Here all the affairs of the coal miners were discussed, and decisions as to the greater strikes arrived at. Several journals were founded, especially the Miners' Advocate, at Newcastle upon Tyne, for defending the rights of the miners. On March 31, 1844, the contracts of all the miners of Northumberland and Durham expired. Roberts was empowered to draw up a new agreement, in which the men demanded 1 payment by weight instead of measure, 2 determination of weight by means of ordinary scales subject to the public inspectors, 3 half-yearly renewal of contracts, 4 abolition of the fine system and payment according to work actually done, 5 the employers to guarantee to miners in their exclusive service at least 4 days' work per week, or wages for the same. This agreement was submitted to the coal kings, and a deputation appointed to negotiate with them. They answered, however, that for them the union did not exist, that they had to deal with single workmen only, and should never recognize the union. They also submitted an agreement of their own which ignored all the foregoing points, and was, naturally, refused by the miners. War was thus declared. On March 31, 1844, 40,000 miners laid down their picks, and every mine in the county stood empty. The funds of the union were so considerable, that for several months a weekly contribution of 2/6d could be assured to each family. While the miners were thus putting the patience of their masters to the test, Roberts organized with incomparable perseverance both strike and agitation, arranged for the holding of meetings, traversed England from one end to the other, preached peaceful and legal agitation, and carried on a crusade against the despotic justices of the peace and tract masters, such as had never been known in England. This he had begun at the beginning of the year. Wherever a miner had been condemned by a justice of the peace, he obtained a habeas corpus from the Court of Queen's Bench, brought his client to London, and always secured an acquittal. Thus, January 13, Judge Williams of Queen's Bench acquitted 3 miners condemned by the Justices of the Peace of Bilston, South Staffordshire. The offence of these people was, that they refused to work in a place which threatened to cave in, and had actually caved in before their return. On an earlier occasion, Judge Patson had acquitted 6 working men, so that the name Roberts began to be a terror to the mine owners. In Preston 4 of his clients were in jail. In the first week of January he proceeded thither, to investigate the case on the spot, but found, when he arrived, the condemned all released before the expiration of the sentence. In Manchester there were 7 in jail. Roberts obtained a habeas corpus and acquittal for all from Judge Whiteman. In Prescott 9 coal miners were in jail, accused of creating a disturbance in St Helens, South Lancashire, and awaiting trial. When Roberts arrived upon the spot, they were released at once. All this took place in the first half of February. In April, Roberts released a miner from jail in Derby, 4 in Wakefield, and 4 in Leicester. So it went on for a time, until these Dogberries came to have some respect for the miners. The truck system shared the same fate. One after another Roberts brought the disreputable mine owners before the courts, and compelled the reluctant justices of the peace to condemn them. Such dread of this lightning Attorney General who seemed to be everywhere at once spread among them, that at Belper, for instance, upon Roberts' arrival, a truck firm published the following notice. Notice. Pentridge Coal Mine. The Messrs. Haslam think it necessary, in order to prevent all mistakes, to announce that all persons employed in their colliery will receive their wages wholly in cash, and may expend them when, and as they choose to do. If they purchase goods in the shops of Messrs. Haslam, they will receive them as heretofore at wholesale prices, but they are not expected to make their purchases there, and work and wages will be continued as usual, whether purchases are made in these shops or elsewhere.